Hello and welcome to BrookVale Farm for our exclusive Nature Watch programme. Our reporters have been very busy over the last few weeks getting out some very nice features of wildlife. We had a very enjoyable morning with the crew in a very unusual studio, and we've even been joined by a nest of swallows above us. Amy's also with us on the farm today, and she's joined by Anne, the owner of the farm. How's things down in the orchard, Amy?
So I'm here with Anne, just down near the orchards here at BrookVale Farm. So Anne, could you tell me something about the history of the farm and the farmhouse?
Well, the farmhouse now, according to the style of the shutters, was built about 1790, which is in the reign of George III, so it's a Georgian house. It was built apparently by a man called Mr. Love, and it was built as a church house for retired ministers and missionaries. My husband's great-grandfather bought the house and the farm for his son about the 1890s, and he came and lived here, had a family of 8, and the youngest son then farmed after that man's death from 1939. There were always orchards on this land, but more orchards were added and planted after the Second World War. Then my husband and myself and family came out here in 1983, and this last 20 years my husband has planted 2 new orchards and pulled out 1 orchard which he has recently replanted, actually just 3 years ago.
What varieties of apple do you grow, and what happens to them at harvest time?
Well, it's mostly Bramley, the County Armagh Bramley. The European Union has granted us the PGI status, which is protected geographical indication status, which means that we can now market our apples as County Armagh Bramley apples. There are only 3 such products in Northern Ireland. One of them would be Cumber potatoes. And we have mostly, as I said, Bramley apples. We have some eater apples, which are Laxon Superbs and Katie. Now, in the autumn time, September, we pull the apples. It's a very, very busy time, and then they are sold to a processor. He puts them in a cold store where they can be kept fresh up to 9 months. During that time, he would bring them out, peel them, dice them, chill pack them, and they're sent off to all parts of the British Isles for the food industry. Now, the smaller apples and the windfalls would be gathered and pulled and sent to a local agent who weighs them, and then they are transported down to Clonmel, which is near Waterford in Southern Ireland, to the Magners Cider Company. So all apples are put to good use, they're all used up.
And during the rest of the year, what do you do with the orchards?
Well, as I said, the really busy time is during the harvest time. That would start about the middle of September and go on till the end of October, depending on the size of the crop. Very, very busy time, 8 to 5 o'clock, 6 days a week, depending on the weather. Then after that, as soon as that's finished, we get into pruning the apples. Now that means we cut back the damaged branches or control the growth of the apples. The older varieties were much bigger trees. Nowadays, when the young orchards are planted, the new orchards are planted, they're all smaller trees. The reason for this is that we don't have to use ladders. Much easier pulling, standing on the terra firma rather than climbing ladders. And so we prune those, and that lasts up till about February time, where you have to clear the branches and things like that off the ground of the orchard. Then into the spring, and we're into a spraying program for scab, mildew, red spider, the sort of things that a gardener would spray against if they have roses or something, or their vegetables. We have to spray that every 7 to 10 days. It has to be during dry weather, because if the rain comes, the spray is washed off before it's any use to the tree. And you can imagine the problems we have here in Northern Ireland with that. Now that goes on until the end of June. And then July and August, when the apples are coming into maturity, we have to pull the shots. Now these are suckers that grow on the branches of the trees, and these would take away the good, and the apples wouldn't grow as big. So we have to do that, and then that brings us right round to the September, when we get ready for the apple season harvest.
And how many acres of land are there on this farm?
Well, with the orchards, with nearly 20, and my husband's going to plant another 4 next year, another 4 acres. It was an orchard a few years ago, and then he pulled them out, so we're going to plant again for the cider industry, and then the rest of the land is given over to beef. There'll be 100 in total.
And how is this year's harvest coping with Northern Ireland's wet weather?
Very bad, very badly indeed. The cold spring and the frosts have meant that really you're down about 1/3 on the crop from last year. Some crops are even 90% wiped out. There was a gentleman was saying he wasn't even going to open the orchard gate in September time. So apples will be very scarce this year, and because of that they will be very, very expensive. It has affected England and Europe are just the same as we are. We are affected the same way.
Well, thank you very much, Anne.
Not at all. It's been a pleasure.
I'm going back. A few days ago, we sent Rebecca Wilkinson, another one of our reporters, to the orchard you just saw Amy and Anne in. She spoke to Stuart Glass about the different types of blossom there. Let's take a look.
Can you tell us why County Armagh is called the Orchard County?
There's a great history of orchards here in County Armagh. Loughgall in particular is known for its orchards, and it's a big celebration every year. We have lots of tourists coming down to see the apple blossom. The conditions, the weather conditions are very suitable for apple growing, and also the soil conditions as well. So it's actually a little bit warmer in County Armagh, and the soil is very fertile, so it's perfect conditions for growing apples.
And do the apple trees take a lot of maintenance?
Yeah, unfortunately they do. There's a lot of work involved in looking after apple trees. We have a spray program to look after a lot of diseases that is associated with Bramley apples. So the most potent of these diseases would be scab, which is a fungus disease. So we have to spray every 10 days for that to prevent the scab, the fungus getting into the trees and basically destroying the apples. There's also different insects that attack the apples. We have things like greenfly that would eat the leaves, also coating moth, which lay their eggs on the leaves, and a thing called red spider. So there's lots of different things. We also have to prune the trees every 2 years, which means going in with a chainsaw and bow saw and going in and cutting out any trees, any branches that aren't very producing that well, or maybe in the way of other ones. So we have to do that every 2 years. We also have to spray all underneath of the trees, make sure, because without that you've got a lot of long grass and a lot of weeds and stuff would grow underneath the trees, and when all the apples fall off the tree, you have to gather them up. So if you're gathering up in long grass or nettles or something, it's not very comfortable to do that. So we spray all underneath to make it like a nice kind of flat, smooth platform for gathering up all the apples. Apart from that, in the summer, the trees like to grow, so they sprout lots of new growth called water shots, and that takes away from the growth of the apples. So we have to come and pull all those, and also makes the pruning job a lot easier in the winter. Also, other things include like mowing the meadows, cutting the grass down, just so the grass goes back into the ground, gives the trees more energy, and the apples will obviously become bigger then.
So Stuart, could you explain to us how pollination works in this orchard?
Yeah, so pollination is very important, especially at this time of the year. Ideally we want kind of warm conditions. Some pollination takes place just by wind, so if it's hot enough and it's windy, some pollen actually just spreads from trees naturally. Other ways that it happens, one of the biggest way is probably by insects, predominantly bees. So a lot of farmers would keep bees on their farm, like hives. So there's a big supply of bees whenever the weather conditions are right, and this time of year when all the bloom's out, there's loads of bees to go and pollinate the different trees. Other insects play a part as well, but bees are the main species that do the pollinating. So I'm just going to show you. If you look at the little flower here, you can see you've obviously got your petals, and in the middle you have you've got pollen. These are the anthers, and on the end of the anthers you have pollen, which are the male parts, and in the in-between there are the female parts, which is the stigma. So what they're going to do, a little bee will come in, and at the very bottom there's nectar, so it will get in, try and get into the nectar. It'll try and drink the nectar is really sweet, and that's where the bees get their energy from, to make their honey and things like that. So once they're out on the way in to get the nectar, their body, their legs will rub against the pollen and collect the pollen, and then the bees will then fly off to another tree, and the pollen from that will get onto the female part and basically result in pollination, and then from there the fruit will grow, and that's basically how pollination occurs. The thing about these bramley trees is they're in fact sterile, so they can't self-pollinate. So what we need in this orchard, we need different varieties of tree. So over here we have a Katy tree. So this tree, this pollinates all the bramley trees. So there's lots of these trees interplanted amongst the orchards. So that's basically the process of pollination.
In order for pollination to happen, bees are essential. We thought it would be a good idea to send Peter to Banbridge to give us this very special report on 250,000 bees. Let's see what he got up to.
Roughly how many bees would you have in these hives?
In these hives here we would have, there's about 8 boxes, and on an average at this time of the year and the various mix of boxes, probably about 250,000 bees.
Then Liam took us over to open one of the hives.
We lift that off. Here you will see, get it close up, new brood, baby bees in other words, which haven't been sealed yet, in the centre of the frame. There's bees or larvae are at all ages. There's egg, young larvae and older larvae. The next stage is when the larvae become sealed. In this frame you'll see some seal brood. And that's the bees that have all their supplies they'll need until they hatch in 21 days. Here you have 2 queen cups, and that could possibly spark alarm as the bees may be creating queen cells. These are what the new queens would hatch out in. So we have a look here and see if there's anything in them. And you can see that one's empty. And that one's empty, so there's no problem there. They're not in swarm mode. If those were in swarm mode, there'd be royal jelly in there and a larvae. So we're okay here. Trying to propagate Irish black bees, native bees. And these are quite dark, quite docile, and a good type of bee to keep. Some bees from imported queens can be quite temperamental and sharp. Unfortunately, these are fine.
So how would the queen's behaviour affect the hive itself then?
The queen's behaviour, or it's not so much the queen's behaviour as the lack of a queen. When bees are queenless, that's when there's no queen present. They get very tetchy and can be very, very defensive. That's the main problem with the queen. Some bees, the queen crossed in various crossings when they mate, produce bad-tempered, or as we would say, cross bees. That's not very often that happens. But the main point is that the box should contain a viable queen. A queen that's healthy, laying well, and by and large then the temper of the hive will be okay. On some of those bees, if you look carefully, you will see on their legs pollen, and on their body there's one there which has been rolling about in pollen. There's another one there, if you can see, with pollen on his legs, probably coming from either the hawthorn or the rowan. So that's it. And the pollen is brought in and it's made into bee bread, is what they call it, which is the food and protein for the baby bees. But within that cell there are eggs at the very bottom of the cell, which look like tiny rice cells. That's what an egg looks like. And a queen bee in full flow, which is this time of year, can lay up to 2,000 eggs a day. Eggs remain as eggs until the developmental larvae at 3 days old. If you focus in there, in about the bee doing a dance. The bees. And the dance is to tell them where the forage is. You use like a GPS system almost to tell the other bees where the forage is in the locality. Queen is head of the colony, and she's the one that produces all the brood. All bees come from the queen. The bees that she produces are two types, two castes, the worker and the drone. The drones are male bees, and they will mate in turn with future virgin queens, and thereby propagating or keeping the colony going. But the worker bees do the house duties, feeding of the brood. The lifespan of a worker bee is about 6 weeks at this time of year, because what happens is, in effect, that the worker bee wears itself out. It works that hard, the wings wear out, and it can fly no more. But the queen, on average, a queen would have a life expectancy of about 3 years.
How much honey would you get from a normal hive?
If you had a good hive, a full hive of bees at the right time of year, if you have a very strong hive now in this fine weather, you could expect to get maybe 60 pounds of honey of a hive, sometimes more, sometimes less, but that would be a reasonable expectation.
Next, we sent Stuart to visit the only herd of white deer in Ireland. He headed to Parkinora Forest Park near Dungannon to bring this report.
So Alec, can you tell us a bit about these deer?
They're in an enclosure here, it's about 20 acres, so it is. We try to keep them down to the manageable 25, because otherwise they'd be becoming overpopulated. So you would. There's usually kept about what he called about 3 or 4 stags, and there's an annual cull every year where there's probably, as I say, they calve in June and July, and there would almost certainly be 10 females pregnant at any time. And there's a cull then of about 10 to a dozen taken out. And we would feed them here in winter on a regular basis with just ordinary farm cattle dairy nuts, and we get them organic hay. They wouldn't really be that dependent on us unless it's really a hard winter. They can fend for themselves.
So how did they come to be here?
The Forest Service acquired them down in Mallow in Cork, and they're descendant from 1798 from Queen Elizabeth I. And the Forest Service decided to purchase them, that they would make this into a deer park.
Is it you, Alec, that looks after the deer?
That's right, I look after them on a regular basis, so I do, and particularly in the winter time. We also have to check the fences, that there's no holes in the fences, that they're protected, that they can't escape. And that also that people's required when they come through the park that they have their dogs on leads.
I've noticed lots of fruit lying about.
Aye, there's a local integrated school here in Parkinora Forest, and the kiddies, when they'd be coming over on their day out, they would bring apples and carrots with them. That's why you see so much fruit lying about round. They would come and would feed them on a daily basis. And as I say, what do you call it? They're casting now. You see their hair all dropping off, but the jackdaws and the magpies, they're using that all there, so they're using that for their nests, so they are. When the wee fawns was born, they come out brown, so they do. But as the season goes on, they lose their what do you call brown coat, and it turns them more whiter in the spring and summer.
Why don't you come down to Parkinora yourself and have a nice day out and come and visit the deer yourself? Right, let's go back to the barn.
With me today I have Robin, who has very kindly agreed to come and show us some of her bats. But first, Robin, how did you get involved in working with the bats?
I was always interested in wildlife. Bats particularly fascinated me. And then 26 years ago there was an extramural course at Queen's University. and I jumped at the chance of taking it. It was only about 6 weeks long, and at the end of that, Professor Forsyth asked me would I like to take out my licence. So I'll start it from that.
Where have the bats come from that you would work with?
My particular ones today are, well, Larry comes from outside Ballymena, and Conway comes from outside Downpatrick. They come from all over the north of Ireland, injured bats.
Why are bats such an endangered species?
It's awful to say on a farm, but sometimes it's modern farming methods. Use of pesticide, insecticide kills off bats' food. Bats are insectivores, all the ones in the British Isles. Draining up little shucks, doing away with bogs, cutting down trees, bats' homes. So it's loss of habitat and loss of food source.
You don't work with bats on your day-to-day job. What do you do, and how did you get how do you link the two?
Well, because they're both environmental and both to do with wildlife. I'm a casual education guide at Oxford Island and also for the Wildlife Trust. So bat work sort of falls into that, but as you can imagine, bat work's mostly at night.
Yeah. How do you monitor the bats then? Because they are awake at night and not during the day. Would you find that difficult?
It's difficult enough, you know, standing freezing cold, pitch black in some places, but we do use bat detectors, and each bat echolocates. You've heard the saying, he's as blind as a bat, which is not true. I mean, they can see as well as we can, but not any better. So they've got to get ways of flying about in the dark and hunting without crashing into something, so they use echolocation. And that's picked up in a bat detector.
Would there be any dangers for bats going out at night?
For bats themselves? Not really. That's why they are nocturnal. It's safer. I mean, owls don't really seem to prey on them. If you get owl pellets and go through them, it's mostly little mice bones and things you would get. No, cats coming out at night now. Most bats are crepuscular. They sort of come out evening time. But no, bats come out at night because it's safer.
Could you maybe show us some of the bats you have today?
Yeah, we have Larry. Larry's on holiday with me. Larry stays with Donna. Now these aren't pets, I must hasten to add. These are injured bats that hopefully will be restored to the wild. Larry can't be, he's got arthritis. But you have to have a special licence to have these. Now, isn't he just lovely?
Yeah.
These are his thumbs, because a bat's wing is actually its hands. And if you can imagine, that will open twice that length. That shows you the length of wings. So he looks quite tiny there, but when he's flying, his wings would be the length of a ruler. So you can see his wee bright eyes, he can see you.
So this would be one of your larger bats?
This is the Lyslers. This is the biggest bat we have in Ireland. Do you want something to eat, Larry? You going to eat that? Larry never lets you down. He'll eat and eat and eat till he busts it. Lyslers are the largest bat we have in Ireland, and they're on the endangered species list, unfortunately.
Would they be found anywhere else in the world, or is it just over in
They're found in the British Isles as well, but Ireland actually, the largest Lyslers roost in the world is in the south of Ireland.
You were talking a bit there about a licence. How and when did you get your licence to have bats?
I got my licence way back about 1986, 1987. It took me 2 years to get it, and you have to have a licence to enter a bat roost, to handle a bat, or to own a bat.
Would there be many people that have licences?
There must be about maybe 10 or 12 of us now in the north of Ireland.
How was the bat group founded?
It was founded way back in 1985 because the Wildlife Act was passed, which protected, amongst other things, bats. Before that, you could get shot at bats. If they were in your house, you could get rid of them. But they're now protected and you just couldn't. So it sort of liaised between people and bats. And we're on the bat side, but we want a happy outcome for all. So we were founded, and we would help educate the public, let them realise they weren't the dreadful things that people think they are. Bats get an awful bad press, and as you can see,
yeah, he's quite cute.
He is. He's very cute, and he's nothing like a mouse. They're closer related to us than they are to mice. They've only one baby a year, and I'll show you Conway, will I?
Yeah.
That's why their numbers do go down terribly if they are interrupted or disturbed in any way. Now I'm going to feed him, and that'll keep him quiet. Right. Okay, Larry, thank you. Conway's a different matter. Conway, we hope it's going to be set free. And it's like small dogs, you know. Small dogs, small bats. They're usually more. Really see the size of this.
He's even smaller.
He's even smaller. You can get 500 of these in a shoebox, and he's doing his darndest to bite me. Oh, Conway. Now that doesn't endear you to people. Look at that. Look. This tiny wee thing can eat 3,000 midges every night. So they're nature's natural pesticide. Yeah. They're also a good indicator of how the rest of the environment is. If you have a healthy bat population, you have healthy insects, which means you have healthy flowers, healthy water. And of course his wee feet are on back to front so that he can hang upside down.
What should people do to get bats out of their house if they don't want them there?
Well, if they don't want them, phone up. Look up on the website, you'll see the bat group's phone number, or also phone the Cultural Folk Museum. Our paid bat worker, our only paid bat worker works there. She's the mammal recorder for the whole of the north of Ireland. Phone up and she will get you in touch with a bat worker. We will come and assess the situation, see if you really have bats, identify the species, and then we will negotiate with you in Environment Services and get you what's called an exclusion order. That means you can close up the little hole and a bat can get in anywhere your finger can get in. You can close that up after the bats have gone. There's no exclusion granted between the middle of May and the beginning of August because that's baby bat time.
All the bats that you would take in, would they all be set free or not?
If they can be. We never keep a healthy bat. So Conway, sweet little tempered soul that he is, Conway's going to be set free probably this week, weather depending. If it's raining or high wind, we don't let them off because the insects won't fly, and bats, their heart's beating 1,000 times a minute when they're flying. So they don't use that super energy unless they're sure they're going to get something to eat.
Is there any difference in when and where you would release male and female bats?
Yeah, if they're females are sociable. They all stay together, they're aunties, grannies, sisters, they all stay in a roost together. Males stay on their own, so if you have a male bat, you can let him free anywhere you know there are that particular species of bat. For example, I got Conway outside Downpatrick, but I'll be able to let him free near where I live.
I believe you also have an MBE. Tell us what that was for.
That was for services to the environment, but it was bat work. I mean, when I met Prince Charles, the first thing he said was, "So you like bats?" You know. So the reason why I accepted it, really, besides being an honour, of course, was so many people laugh when you say you work with bats. You know, especially when you're called Robin. But it was way back in the 2003 New Year's honours.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Robin.
You're welcome.
Along with bees and bats, we thought we should take a look at insects. We sent Adam along to various locations around Northern Ireland, including Oxford Island and Peatlands Park. Let's see how he got on.
Insects are everywhere. They can be found on land, in the air, and even underwater. Insects fulfill a wide variety of tasks, such as pollination of plants, without which life as we knew it would not exist. They are also responsible for disposal of decaying matter such as dung, dead leaves, and similar materials. Insects are hugely diverse, with over 1 million different species. This diversity can be observed in your own garden. Some of the insect types we are familiar with include beetles, which tend to live in the ground but can also be found in trees. Flies, which have adapted to live in almost any environment and whose eggs and young can be in soil, in water, and often anywhere where there is a suitable substrate for food for their young to consume. Many other types of insect exist, including butterflies, moths, ants, bees. There are also true bugs, which are insects that do not fit into the normal categories, such as water skeeters. who dance in the surface of water using surface tension. Water boatmen, which spends most of its life underwater. Their feet have been adapted to act like oars. This allows them to propel themselves through water. Aphids are often found under leaves and feed off the sap which they drain from the leaves via needle-like tubes. From this, the aphids produce a substance called honeydew, a sugar-rich liquid which other insects feed off, such as ants and flies. Some other more common insects like bees, wasps and ants are also closely related. Here we have a honeybee, often kept by humans, to pollinate farmland and produce honey for human consumption. Bumblebees, which you are more likely to encounter as they are large and brightly coloured, but also seem a lot slower and clumsier than most insects. This looks like a wasp, but it is actually a nomada bee, also known as the cuckoo bee, which is a solitary and parasitic bee. Instead of collecting food and building nests, they instead lay their eggs in the nests of other bees, and in turn their young feed off the food provided by the host bees. Ants are other insects we are familiar with. Ants live in colonies, usually underground, but also sometimes in trees. They spend most of their lives constructing, maintaining the colony, and looking after the queen, supplying her with food and moving eggs to safe locations within the colony. Ants on the surface have the job of foraging, i.e. finding food and resources and bringing them back to the hive. Ants can be very aggressive if the colony is threatened. Their bite is very similar to that of a bee sting, which also contains formic acid. There are many other types of insects in all shapes and sizes, so keep your eye out and you never know what you will find.
You should do it at night at Loch
Now from
Park with
bees
those
and
bats.
bats to badgers. Rachel headed out with a film crew to a secret location where she captured footage of badgers being hand-fed by a local resident. This amazing footage is the result of many years' hard work by the gentleman who has now gained the trust of the badgers. Let's take a look.
This next piece is top secret. I can't reveal to you where we are, but what you're about to see is truly amazing. We're going to see badgers being hand-fed. Let's come and see them. Here's our first sighting of the badgers. It has taken this gentleman years to win the confidence of these animals. He feeds them every evening.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed the programme so far. For our final report, we're going to go back over to Amy, who's joined with Robin looking for some bats. Amy, over to you.
So I'm here with Robin and we're just going to go see if we can find any bats in this farm. So Robin, where would you expect to find bats in a farm like this?
Well, you would expect to find them round the buildings, funny enough, although there's a load of mature trees around here. I can see ash trees too, that bats love especially, because they go hollow early and they make good roosts. But I would be very surprised if there aren't pipistrelle under those lovely slates there.
So maybe we should just go over and take a look.
Well, you can look and see, usually see droppings, looks like mouse poo, and that's a sure giveaway, and you would see it on the windowsills.
Yeah.
No, not a lot. Not a lot, but of course you wouldn't actually know until you were coming to emergence time, which this time of year is about 10 o'clock at night.
Is there many bats in Northern Ireland?
Well, that's a leading question. How long is a piece of string? We have quite a few, but their numbers are diminishing due to cutting down the trees and interfering with the food source. They are going down, the numbers are going down.
Is there many different variations?
There's 8 different species in the north, 9 in the whole of Ireland. But worldwide there's about 1,000 different species.
That's a lot of bats.
They're found everywhere but the Arctic and Antarctic circles. And they do all sorts of good stuff. Everything they do is beneficial to us.
So where else do you think we could take a look?
Well, we've got brilliant barns here, much loved by the brown long-eared. They like the open rafters. Now they wouldn't be downstairs, I was looking there, that's too low, but I can see you've access up to the top. And they would fly freely about in the rafters. Sure sign of a brown long-eared roost is a wee butterfly and moth wings underneath.
Well, maybe we should go over and take a look.
Okay. Also you can see the stone buildings here. Very useful for hibernation. Bats sleep all winter, as you know. From sort of end of October, they'll hibernate right through to the spring. And they can either make roosts or they can sleep all winter long. In between the stones, if your finger can get in, a bat can get in. Doesn't need a big space. After all, you can get 500 pipistrelle in a shoebox.
So is there any signs of bats here?
Well, not that I can see, but we can't get up to the top roost, I'm batting the mind. Top roof, top floor, but if we were, you would surely see, you know, the wee wings and things. But I would be very surprised if there's not long-eareds in here, because I've looked around earlier and there's lots of open beams and lots of, this is like open countryside, there's pasture land, lots of places for the midges and to breed and the cow manure and stuff. So, and it doesn't seem to be sort of, you know, the use of pesticide or anything here because of all the lovely bees and stuff to pollinate the apple blossom. So it would be ideal country for bats.
Do you think for anyone at home who wants to go, you know, bat spotting, how would they spot them?
Bats are a good thing to study because they're everywhere, even in towns and, you know, not just countryside. A good way to start is go to a bat walk and talk, and you'll hear all about them, and then you can come out with us with bat detectors. They're all over the country now in the summer. And then just yourself pick somewhere you think there might be some bats. You need a lot of patience and just sit coming up to dusk, maybe 15 minutes after sunset, and just keep your eye open.
Well, maybe we should take a look in there and just see if there's any bats in there.
Okay. Sometimes you can see bats flying about in your garden and, you know, suddenly they fly about and then vanish. And what they're doing is they have feeding paths. They'll waken up and they'll go and feed up and down maybe 10 minutes in one place and then move on.
Yeah. Nearly in places you don't expect them to be.
No, you can see them all funny places, you know. Oh, there's a wee swallow. Now you see there's lots of flies would like that. Now this is a bit low for long-eareds, although I have seen them as low as this, but usually they prefer, you know, the full height of the building. But you see that big space there? They would think nothing of coming down here and flying round the roost. They're one of the species that will fly in the, you know, they fly round the roost. Pipistrelle, lyslers, they tend to just all bunch up and then go outside for flying. But the long-eareds, when you go into a long-eared roost, they're flying about. Or they're hanging up like Disney bats watching you. You know, the big ears are going like. Mm-hmm. But no, they would be upstairs rather than down here. If they were here, you would see the wee wings on the floor.
Are the wings a sign of the bats then?
Yes, they eat the moths. Brown long-eareds like to eat moths. That's why they don't echolocate loudly. They whisper because moths have ears and moths can hear them. So they just whisper sneakily. And they will catch them and they'll sit on a branch or they'll sit in their roost and eat them. But they don't like the wings, obviously. So they just drop them down.
Leaving rubbish wherever they go.
Yes, litter lights.
Do you think because bats are nocturnal animals, a great place to do would go out and just at night and just try and find bats?
Well, just keep your eyes open as you're going around. As I say, lots of them are crepuscular. That means they'll come out in the evening just after sunset. And they will, they don't fly all through the night. They'll be back and forward and they'll rest in the trees. This time of year, baby bat time, the babies are being born, they'll not stray too far from their roost. So if you have a roost nearby, you might see them go back and forward into it. Because if they've got the baby, they've got to feed it. Babies live on milk just like us, they're mammals. So the mummy will have to be back in to feed the baby.
Thank you very much for coming and looking for bats with us.
You're welcome. Keep your eyes open.
Well, that concludes our very first Nature Watch programme brought to you from BrookVale Farm. Just like to thank the Glass family for allowing us to access their farm and for helping us so willingly. We've had a great day today and we look forward to more Nature Watch programmes with you. Bye!